Hello, I'm Jennifer, also known as the Nuck and Futz housewife. And I want to talk to you all today about something that is very serious. I would like to share with you all the reason why I chose to homeschool my children instead of allowing them to stay in public school. So, in August of 2017, there was a young man who chose to go into the local library after being suspended from our local high school. There's only one in our town. And shot 6 people, and 4 died. I don't have very much more on this story because everything is still developing and our town is less than forthcoming whenever it comes to the problems that we all have in everyday life. But I was a high school student when Columbine happened on April 20th of 1999. And so whenever I am watching these school shootings unfold, that's my primary reference for clues and explanation and understanding and a way to break down the experience in a way that I can cope with, I guess, is the best. There's a way to explain it, but I can't articulate it right now. Before I opened up this video and started speaking on this issue, I did go through and do some notes, and I'm only speaking about Columbine as the facts here, and then I'm applying it in an opinionated fashion to the experiences that have happened over the past 18, 19 years. Because it's coming up next year on April 20th, it'll be 20 years since they had done that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold had went into their high school in Littleton, Colorado, and shot 13 of their classmates and injured 22 of them, including a teacher. So, Eric Harris was born on April 9th of 1981, and his father was an Air Force pilot. And so being a child who was part of the military family, he had to move often and most likely break friendships, relationships, and things like that. And that probably left some emotional baggage that wasn't necessarily pinpointed at the time whenever he finally made his exit on this planet. According to his father, Wayne, who started a journal about Eric's behavior after there was a little fake suicide attempt with fake blood in a video made showing his homecoming date, Tiffany Tyler, that he was emotionally unstable. Her decline of his courtship affected him emotionally, and so he wanted to make sure that she understood that, and that was the freshman year. So from freshman to senior year, he had dealt with this bundle of emotions and didn't have a process to therapeutically sort through them and mature from that. Eric and Dylan had a close relationship from middle school. Dylan had a hard time transitioning from elementary into middle school, and Eric seemed to be that tether that he needed for stability and companionship. There's not any mention about if there was a faith or any form of tradition practiced in Eric Harris's home. But in Dylan Klebold's home, they did attend a Lutheran church, and then Dylan Klebold's paternal grandfather was very adamant about them practicing the Russian Jewish traditions of his heritage. So I don't know if that would be anything that would have an effect on the totality of events. I mean, the only person that knows is the person that's acting in their capacity. These are just all interpretations. So it's It's really disheartening to see that these people struggled for so long and asked, screamed, yelled, stomped their feet, and threatened for help. And they maybe didn't even need help, but they most definitely needed to be restrained from what they caused. I believe that Columbine was most definitely carried out by these two gentlemen because we have video footage in the cafeteria watching them do things. I don't feel that they had it planned out as well as they thought it did, because you can see in the near 50 minutes that they had terrorized their classmates and this facility, that they didn't even think out where to start or really anything other than just, we're gonna go kill people. Eric Harris kept a journal, and so did Dylan Klebold, and those have been released, and there's parts that you can read online. So at 11:10 a.m. on the morning of April 20th, they had showed up in separate cars, and they had two 20-pound propane tanks that they had created into homemade bombs. And there was a diversion tactic that was used where a bomb partially detonated, but the fire department had just put it out. There didn't raise an alarm in the connecting it until later on that was a diversion tactic for them to be shooting. Their original intent was to detonate the bombs in the cafeteria and have people running out of the school, and then they were going to shoot them from a vantage point. But that didn't work because the bombs didn't detonate in the fashion that they were needing to. A pipe bomb was used at some point as well, and it didn't detonate in the fashion that they were expecting to either. So these things were all like trial. They didn't have the opportunity the way that professional companies have to test these things prior to them using them. This was like a once in a lifetime, only shot scenario, and they took it and ran with it, which is just insane that it got this far. So that brings me to what this entire video is about. Violating the Second Amendment for law-abiding citizens is not going to prevent school shootings at all, ever, under any circumstances. The fact that these people who are accused of these school shootings and stabbings and tirades and whatever else you want to call it are picked on and bullied is why these school shootings and other violence happens. Bottom line. My encouragement would be to stop aligning people based on differences. Stop highlighting the fact that these children aren't able to carry out quote unquote normal lives according to other people. Children reflect what they are at home, what they're exposed to at home, how they feel at home. And so if there's not a support system at home that gives them a therapy to release and break apart all of the stress that they have being exposed to these other areas of life, then you're going to get things that are built up to where there's only one solution, which is what a lot of these news stories are about right now. Here's why the Second Amendment, violating it against law-abiding citizens, isn't going to do anything for these school shootings. Robin Anderson, she was Dylan Klebold's prom date. She bought a rifle and shotguns for this incident. She didn't know that they were going to use it to do that. but she went and purchased them. There was another gentleman that worked at the pizzeria that the two worked at. He purchased one of the weapons too for these gentlemen. Not to mention the fact that, okay, if you're going to violate the Second Amendment for law-abiding citizens and not allow us to have some form of protection against a criminal or someone who's doing us harm because they have no care or consideration for their own life, then they're going to do the exact same thing that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold did. They're going to make homemade propane bombs, and then they're not going to kill 2 or 3 people. They're going to kill 50 or 60 at once. And what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything because it's all in here on these people. And you can't visually see. I mean, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold told you guys exactly what they were going to do, and they did it. They fucking did it. Eric was on psychiatric medication, Lovox, but it wasn't anywhere near what would have exceeded the therapeutic levels. I don't know what's considered a therapeutic level because I refuse all prescription medication because there's nothing therapeutic about it. It's patented. It's not natural. Eric Harris hosted a website ranting about everyday life, the people that he didn't like, his teachers, his parents, the students that he was involved with, everything. I haven't personally read any of it, but this is all on a crime website that I will link to you all in the description if you want to read about it. It's a pretty intense article, and it's in depth about a bunch of people. So Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were the targets of bullies, and so they became bullies. They liked to play the video games Doom, Quake, and a few other ones. There's some levels on Doom that are now deemed the Harris levels because of how enthusiastic and how proficient he was in it, I guess. Which goes to show that you can't interpret video games into real life and be successful. At least he was successful at murdering some people, but let's be realistic. He didn't win. It's thought that Dylan Klebold wasn't so much of a bully as he was just the sidekick he gave Eric Harris a little bit more of a motivational aspect of his aggression and anger. They kind of fed off of one another. They took a lot of videos inside of one of the kids' basements. These kids were all about it. They wrote a will. They did a video will. They bequeathed things to people. So they already knew what they were going to do. They were going to die that day. And one of the reasons why it said that they committed suicide, or there's a hypothesis considering that it was a murder-suicide, is that they were under the impression that the police department was going to come in and just annihilate them. And they didn't. They let these boys, they had 2 separate shootouts with these boys. 2. You're not telling me that there's not one person on that entire police force that could have went into there with tactics that are taught to you at taxpayer dollars and shot both of them boys? Did they not deserve to be shot? For 49 minutes, they had 2 shootouts with police. These boys were pacing throughout the entire school. They had 2 car bombs. Klebold's car bomb was detonated whenever the police department, the bomb squad, was trying to disarm it, but nobody was hurt. They created a pipe bomb. They had one of their guns jammed. Shit started falling apart quick enough to where if somebody would have been there who is proficient in protecting the masses, these boys they would have probably gotten 2 people. the 2 people that they shot outside, and that's it. But instead, I don't have the solution to this because I'm not our almighty. But I can tell you that my children are not going to be victims of a school shooting, because whenever a shooting of a teenager took place in a public library in my hometown, I immediately removed my children from the situation. And my children know about gun safety. My 12-year-old can put a lot of grown men to shame on the field whenever it comes to practicing. If I'm ever in a deadly situation to where I need to make sure that my life and my children and my family's life is out, you can damn well bet you I'm going to hand that gun to my 12-year-old. Prior to that being a scenario that I have to actually allow to become my reality, I'm going to do everything in my power to protect me and mine's, to where he doesn't have to rise up to that area. If you have no regard for somebody's life, you have no reason to think that they're going to regard yours. It's unfortunate that these parents lost their children all the way around, from Columbine up until the most recent one. Any child who dies in a school-related shooting is unacceptable. Any child who feels that their only resort to be heard and understood is to go shoot people is unacceptable. Removing the First Amendment, violating the Second Amendment, thinking that all of us aren't allowed to protect ourselves, that's not going to do anything other than annihilate any residual peace that's there. I'll be right there, baby. I'm finishing up right now. Love you. The main theme of this video is that I will not allow you to steal my Second Amendment from me. I am not responsible for any of these school shootings. I am not responsible for raising children who violate and emotionally abuse others to the point to where their only solution in their capacity of reference is to shoot people. And if you're one of those parents that is like me, where you're raising children the right way, to have sympathy and compassion, to be able to process and digest emotional trauma in a therapeutic way, to where this isn't going to be something that builds up to that point, then you need to make sure that your Second Amendment isn't going to be violated. I'm not protecting guns, and I'm not promoting armed guards being in schools. But what I am saying is that there's needing to be a solution, and it starts with the school body, which are the students, and it starts at home as well. If you disarm me, that's not solving anything, because the mental abuse is still there. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you choosing to view my video. I am on Patreon, Steemit, YouTube for now, DTube. I am on Facebook and Instagram. I also own a store named Lofty Needs, LOFTYNEEDS. It's 2 words. I am in the Apple and Android store And I also have a desktop website. I sell non-GMO foods, and I sell things that are cruelty-free, and I am an advocate of fair trade. Thank you very much for your time. I'll be right there.